You've been taught that if you don't push harder, nothing will happen. That if you relax, you'll fall behind. That calm is laziness and stillness is weakness. That lie is the reason you're exhausted, anxious, and constantly feeling late in your own life. Look closely at your stress. Has it actually improved your outcomes, or has it just drained your energy while giving you the illusion of control? The truth most people don't want to face is this: the more desperately you chase, the more scattered you become. And the more scattered you are, the harder it is for anything meaningful to reach you. Relaxing is not quitting. Relaxing is removing the noise that blocks what's already moving toward you. 1. Chasing creates resistance. Most people don't realize they're chasing from fear. They think they're being ambitious, disciplined, hungry. But look closer at the energy behind their actions. It's rushed. It's tense. It's reactive. When fear is driving you, everything becomes urgent. Every delay feels personal. Every unanswered message feels like rejection. Every pause feels like you're falling behind. That fear tightens your grip on life, and the tighter your grip becomes, the less room there is for things to flow naturally. When you chase from fear, your thinking narrows. You stop seeing the full picture and start obsessing over one outcome. You become outcome dependent. Your mood rises and falls based on what happens externally. That's when you start forcing conversations, forcing decisions, forcing timelines that were never meant to be forced. You're moving, but you're not grounded. You're active, but not present. And people can feel that immediately. Desperation doesn't need to be spoken. It leaks through tone, body language, timing, and choices. Opportunities work the same way. They require awareness, not panic. When you're frantic, you miss signals. You misread situations. You take shortcuts that cost you later. You confuse speed with progress. You say yes to things you should have declined. You stay in situations that are clearly draining because you're afraid of losing momentum. But momentum built on fear is unstable. It collapses under pressure because it was never rooted in clarity. Resistance is created the moment you stop trusting the process and start fighting it. You begin pushing against reality instead of working with it. You demand certainty before it's possible. You want guarantees before growth. Life doesn't respond well to being cornered. The harder you push, the more friction you create. That friction shows up as delays, confusion, burnout, and repeated setbacks that seem unfair until you realize their feedback. Calm does not slow progress. That's a myth repeated by people who confuse chaos with productivity. Panic slows progress because it scatters your attention. It drains your energy. It makes simple decisions complicated and complicated decisions reckless. When you're calm, your perception widens. You notice patterns instead of obsessing over outcomes. You recognize timing instead of fighting it. You see openings that were always there but invisible to a stressed mind. Relaxation doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing things without inner resistance. It means acting from clarity rather than fear. When you relax, you stop reacting to every trigger. You pause before responding. You allow information to arrive. You give situations time to reveal themselves instead of demanding immediate answers. That patience is not passive, it's strategic. It keeps you from sabotaging what was quietly aligning in your favor. Think about the times in your life when things worked out unexpectedly. You weren't forcing. You weren't chasing. You weren't engaged, but not desperate. Present, but not obsessed. Available, but not clinging. That state allowed life to meet you halfway. When you're relaxed, you're easier to work with. People open up. Conversations flow. Opportunities feel natural instead of strained. Nothing feels like it's being dragged across the finish line. What's meant for you doesn't need you frantic. It doesn't require you to exhaust yourself proving your worth. It doesn't ask you to abandon your peace just to keep it alive. Things that are aligned arrive through steadiness, not struggle. When something is right, it may still challenge you, but it won't constantly drain you. It won't require you to betray your intuition just to keep it. Availability is different from chasing. Chasing says, I need this now or I'm not okay. Availability says, I'm ready, aware, and grounded enough to receive what fits. One repels, the other attracts. When you relax, you create space. Space for better decisions. Space for better timing. Space for outcomes that don't collapse the moment you stop forcing them. The irony is simple and uncomfortable. The energy you think is helping you is often the reason things feel blocked. Calm clears the path. Panic clutters it. If you want things to move toward you, stop running at them in fear. Stand steady. Be clear. Be present. That's when resistance fades and alignment begins. 2. Control is mostly an illusion. Most of your stress doesn't come from what's happening. It comes from your attempt to control what cannot be controlled. You plan, you predict, you rehearse outcomes in your head, and you call that responsibility. But underneath it is fear. Fear of uncertainty. Fear of being caught off guard. Fear of trusting life without a guarantee. The need for control feels productive, but it quietly exhausts you because reality never fully cooperates with your expectations. You can control effort, you can control preparation, you can control how you respond, but outcomes live outside your authority. When you forget this, you start treating life like a machine, instead of a living process. You expect linear progress. You demand clear timelines. You panic when things don't move according to schedule. And when reality deviates, you assume something is wrong with you, or with the world. That assumption is the root of unnecessary suffering. The illusion of control is comforting because it gives you the feeling that nothing bad will happen if you plan well enough. But life doesn't reward micromanagement. It rewards adaptability. The people who handle life best aren't the ones who control everything. They're the ones who adjust without losing themselves. They don't collapse when plans change. They don't interpret unpredictability as failure. They understand that uncertainty is not a threat. It's a condition of being alive. When you try to control everything, you shrink your tolerance for ambiguity. Every unknown becomes a source of anxiety. You want answers before they're available. You want clarity before the lesson unfolds. This makes you impatient with growth. You rush decisions because waiting feels unbearable. You force closure where openness is required, and later you pay for those rushed choices with regret, confusion, or the feeling that something is off, but you can't explain why. Relaxing your need for control doesn't make you careless. It makes you honest. Honest about what you can influence and what you can't. That honesty is freeing. It stops you from wasting energy fighting reality. It allows you to work with circumstances instead of against them. You stop asking, how do I make this go my way? And start asking, what is this situation asking of me right now? That question leads to better decisions. Control-driven living also damages relationships. When you're obsessed with outcomes, you listen to respond, not to understand. You steer conversations instead of allowing them. You push people into roles that fit your expectations. Over time, that creates distance. People feel managed, not met. When you relax your grip, presence returns. You hear what's actually being said. You notice what's unspoken. That awareness builds trust, which no amount of control ever can. There's also a hidden arrogance in excessive control. It assumes you know exactly how things should unfold. It ignores the possibility that life might have better timing, better sequencing, or better outcomes than the ones you imagined. When you loosen control, you make room for intelligence beyond your planning, not blind faith, but humility. The understanding that you don't see the full map yet, and that's okay. Influence replaces control when you relax. Influence is subtle but powerful. It's how you shape outcomes without forcing them. You show up consistently. You communicate clearly. You stay aligned with your values. And then you allow results to emerge. Influence respects process. Control tries to bypass it. One creates sustainability. The other creates burnout. Think about how often your worst stress came from trying to prevent something that never happened or forcing something that wasn't ready. Control didn't protect you. It just kept your nervous system in a constant state of tension. Letting go of that illusion doesn't make life predictable, but it makes you resilient, and resilience is far more useful than certainty. When you stop trying to command life, you stop fighting it. You become flexible instead of rigid, alert instead of anxious, grounded instead of controlling. That shift doesn't make you weaker, it makes you steadier. And steadiness is what allows you to handle whatever actually arrives, not just what you planned for. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. Control is heavy. It drains you quietly. Relaxing your grip doesn't mean chaos follows. It means clarity does. You still act. You still choose. You just stop pretending you can orchestrate every outcome. And in that release, life becomes less of a battlefield and more of a conversation, one you're finally calm enough to listen to. 3. Your nervous system shapes your reality. Most people think their problems start in the outside world. In reality, many of them start inside the body. When your nervous system is constantly activated, your mind cannot think clearly, no matter how intelligent you are. Chronic tension keeps you in survival mode, and survival mode is designed for danger, not for building a meaningful life. When your body believes you are under threat, everything changes. Your attention narrows. You scan for problems instead of possibilities. You become impatient, irritable, and reactive. Small issues feel overwhelming. Neutral situations feel threatening. You mistake urgency for importance and pressure for progress. In that state, you're not choosing your life, you're reacting to it. This is why calm people often seem to move through life more smoothly. It's not luck. Their nervous systems are regulated enough to allow clear perception. They pause before responding. They don't rush into decisions to escape discomfort. They tolerate uncertainty without collapsing. That tolerance gives them an advantage most people never develop. An anxious nervous system doesn't just affect your mood, it shapes your results. It changes how you speak, how you listen, and how you interpret events. You might think you're being proactive, but often you're just trying to relieve internal pressure. You send messages too quickly. You agree to things too soon. You walk away from things too early. Not because it's wise, but because your body wants the tension to stop. Calm doesn't mean the absence of challenge. It means your system isn't overwhelmed by it. When your nervous system is steady, you can stay present during difficulty instead of escaping it. You can have hard conversations without becoming defensive. You can face delays without spiraling into self-doubt. You can wait without feeling like you're wasting time. That changes everything. Your nervous system also determines what you notice. Stress narrows perception. Calm expands it. When you're regulated, you see nuance. You read situations accurately. You sense when to push and when to pause. You pick up on timing, tone, and subtext. These are subtle signals that guide good decisions, but they're invisible to a stressed mind. This is why relaxation isn't indulgence, it's maintenance. Just like sleep, it keeps your system functional. A dysregulated nervous system cannot sustain long-term effort. It burns out, shuts down, or turns against you through anxiety, procrastination, or emotional numbness. Many people blame themselves for these states, when the real issue is exhaustion at the physiological level. Learning to calm your nervous system isn't about becoming passive, it's about restoring your ability to choose. When you're calm, you respond instead of react. You decide instead of panic. You act from clarity, rather than compulsion. That's real control. Not over life, but over yourself. Your body is constantly sending signals: tightness in the chest, shallow breathing, restlessness. These are not flaws, they're information. They're signs that you're pushing too hard, expecting too much certainty, or living in a constant state of mental rehearsal. Ignoring these signals doesn't make you stronger, it makes you disconnected. When you slow down enough to regulate your system, something shifts. Thoughts become less noisy, emotions become manageable, decisions feel simpler. You don't need to force calm. It emerges naturally when the body feels safe. And safety doesn't mean comfort. It means stability. This is where people get it wrong. They try to think their way out of anxiety, but clarity follows calm, not the other way around. You don't calm down because you understand everything. You understand more because you calm down. As your nervous system steadies, your reality changes, not because the world suddenly cooperates, but because you can finally meet it as it is. You stop living in anticipation of disaster or obsession with outcomes. You become present, and presence is where effective action begins. If you want your life to move forward with less friction, start here. Not with more effort, not with more planning, with regulation, with calm. Because a steady nervous system doesn't just improve how you feel, it determines how well you live. Timing is not working against you. One of the quiet beliefs that keeps people anxious is the idea that they are late in life, late in success, late in relationships, late in understanding themselves. This belief creates constant pressure to catch up, even when there is no clear finish line. You start measuring your life against imagined deadlines that were never real to begin with. And in that rush, you make decisions that don't fit who you are or what you actually need. Timing is not an enemy you're racing, it's a teacher you're resisting. When something doesn't happen when you expect it to, the mind immediately labels it as a failure or a delay, but often it's preparation. Growth rarely announces itself. It happens quietly, while you're convinced nothing is moving. The problem isn't that life is slow. The problem is that your expectations are loud. When you rush timing, you skip essential steps. You enter situations before you're ready to handle them. You accept responsibility before you've built the capacity to carry it. You chase relationships before you've learned how to be present in them. At first it feels like progress. Later it feels like confusion. Things fall apart not because you weren't capable, but because the timing was wrong. Relaxing doesn't mean you stop caring about your future. It means you stop panicking about the pace. Panic compresses time. It makes every moment feel like it must produce a result. But life doesn't unfold in straight lines. It moves in cycles, pauses, and recalibrations. When you allow those pauses, you gain something speed can't give you depth. There's a reason some opportunities don't arrive when you demand them. You may not have the discernment to choose wisely yet. You may not have the boundaries to protect what you gain. You may not have the humility to handle success without becoming reckless. Timing protects you from versions of yourself that are not ready. What feels like delay is often design. People who trust timing make fewer desperate decisions. They don't jump at every option just to feel like something is happening. They know that movement without alignment leads to regret. They wait without disengaging. They prepare without obsessing. That balance is rare, but it's powerful. It keeps you from building a life that looks impressive but feels wrong. You've likely experienced this already. Something you wanted badly at one point either arrived later in a better form or faded because it no longer fit. At the time, the waiting felt unbearable. In hindsight, it was necessary. Timing gave you perspective you didn't have when you were desperate. When you relax, your relationship with time changes. You stop fighting it. You start cooperating with it. You work steadily instead of frantically. You let things mature instead of rushing outcomes. And when something finally arrives, you're able to hold it without fear of losing it immediately. The pressure to hurry often comes from comparison. You see fragments of other people's lives and assume they're ahead. You don't see their doubts, compromises, or costs. You only see motion, and motion is not the same as progress. Many people are busy avoiding themselves. That's not a timeline you want to copy. Timing doesn't reward urgency. It rewards readiness. Readiness is built in quiet moments when nothing dramatic seems to be happening. It's built when you refine your values, sharpen your awareness, and strengthen your capacity. These things don't show up as milestones, but they determine whether milestones will sustain you. If you feel behind, pause before you panic. Ask yourself what you're being prepared for. Ask who you're being protected from. Not everything that arrives late is a loss. Some things arrive exactly when you can finally receive them without destroying them. Relaxing into timing doesn't make life slower, it makes it smarter. It allows things to unfold with stability instead of strain. And when you stop treating time as a threat, you realize something important: you were never late. You were becoming ready. 5. Letting go is not giving up. Most people hear let go and assume it means stop trying, stop caring, lower your standards. That misunderstanding keeps them clinging to situations long past their usefulness. In reality, letting go has nothing to do with laziness or indifference. It has everything to do with clarity. Letting go means releasing your emotional dependence on a specific outcome while staying committed to showing up with integrity. When you refuse to let go, you tie your self-worth to results you cannot fully control. Every delay feels like rejection. Every setback feels like proof that you're failing. That attachment distorts your perception. You stop asking whether something is right and start asking whether you can make it work at any cost. Over time, that cost becomes your peace, your values, and your ability to think clearly. Letting go begins the moment you realize that effort and obsession are not the same thing. Effort is steady. Obsession is anxious. Effort is grounded in purpose. Obsession is driven by fear of loss. When you let go, you don't abandon effort. You refine it. You remove the desperation that contaminates your actions. You stop forcing timelines. You stop bargaining with reality. You stop performing just to be chosen. This shift is uncomfortable because attachment feels like control. It gives you the illusion that if you care hard enough, push long enough, or sacrifice enough, the outcome will bend in your favor. But life doesn't respond to pressure the way you want it to. Pressure often creates distortion. You start tolerating what you shouldn't. You ignore red flags. You override your intuition because you're afraid of starting over or facing uncertainty. Letting go restores discernment. It brings you back to the question you stopped asking: is this aligned with who I am becoming? When you're no longer gripping the outcome, you can evaluate situations honestly. You can walk away without feeling like you failed. You can stay without feeling trapped. That freedom is not weakness. It's maturity. People often cling because they believe letting go means losing something valuable. But what you're actually losing is an illusion. You're losing the fantasy that something external will finally make you feel secure. When you let go, you return that responsibility to yourself. You stop outsourcing your stability to people, circumstances, or achievements. That internal stability changes how you move through the world. Letting go also creates space. Space for better options. Space for healthier dynamics. Space for outcomes you couldn't access while you were emotionally congested. When your hands are clenched, you can't receive anything new. When you loosen your grip, you create room for what fits naturally instead of what you're forcing to stay. There's also a quiet confidence that emerges when you let go. You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop negotiating your worth. You act because it's aligned, not because you're afraid of losing momentum. That confidence is felt, not announced. It changes how people respond to you. It changes how opportunities unfold, not because you manipulated anything, but because you're no longer broadcasting need. Letting go doesn't mean nothing matters. It means fewer things control you. It means your peace is no longer hostage to a single outcome. You can want something deeply without being destroyed by its absence. You can work toward a goal without losing yourself to it. That balance is rare and it's powerful. If something collapses the moment you stop forcing it, it was never stable. If something only survives on your anxiety, it was never aligned. Letting go reveals truth, and truth, even when uncomfortable, frees you from endless struggle. In the end, letting go isn't about loss. It's about trust. Trust that you can handle uncertainty. Trust that what's meant to stay won't require you to abandon yourself. And trust that releasing what no longer fits is not failure. It's preparation for something better that couldn't reach you while your grip was tight. 6. What sits meant for you doesn't require self-betrayal. One of the clearest signs that you're forcing something is how much you have to shrink yourself to keep it. You silence your instincts, you tolerate behavior that drains you, you explain away discomfort because you're afraid that if you don't adapt, you'll lose the opportunity. This is not alignment, this is survival, and survival always asks you to betray yourself first. When something is meant for you, it may challenge you, but it won't consistently violate you. It won't demand that you abandon your values, ignore your intuition, or live in a constant state of anxiety just to maintain it. Growth can be uncomfortable, but it doesn't require self-regret. There's a difference between stretching and breaking, and most people cross that line without noticing. Self-betrayal usually happens quietly. You say yes when your body says no. You stay silent to avoid conflict. You overextend to be liked. You accept less than you deserve because you're afraid of having nothing. Over time, this creates inner friction. You may get what you wanted, but you don't feel settled. You feel tense, resentful, or disconnected from yourself. That's the cost of forcing what doesn't fit. When you're relaxed and grounded, self-betrayal becomes harder. Calm sharpens your awareness. You notice when something feels off instead of overriding that signal. You listen to discomfort as information, not something to suppress. This doesn't make you rigid or selfish. It makes you honest, and honesty protects you from building a life that looks successful but feels wrong. What's meant for you recognizes you as you are, not as a performance. You don't have to contort yourself to be acceptable. You don't have to stay hyper-vigilant to keep things intact. There's a natural rhythm to aligned situations. You can speak without rehearsing every word. You can rest without fearing everything will collapse. You can set boundaries without punishment. That ease is not coincidence. People often mistake chaos for passion and anxiety for commitment. They believe that if something doesn't feel intense, it must not matter. But intensity fueled by fear is unstable. It burns fast and leaves damage behind. What's meant for you has steadiness beneath it. It can handle pauses. It survives honesty. It doesn't disappear the moment you stop overcompensating. Relaxing allows discernment to return. You start asking better questions. Not how do I keep this at any cost, but is this nourishing or draining me? Not what do I need to do to be chosen, but is this choosing me as well? These questions shift the dynamic. They move you from proving to evaluating, from chasing to selecting. When you stop betraying yourself, some things will fall away. That's not loss, that's alignment correcting itself. Things that relied on your silence, exhaustion, or fear cannot survive clarity. And that's a good thing. They were costing you more than they were giving. What's meant for you doesn't require constant anxiety to sustain it. It doesn't need you smaller, quieter, or less authentic. It may ask you to grow, but it won't ask you to disappear. The moment you stop abandoning yourself is often the moment alignment becomes possible. If you have to lose your peace to keep something, it's not meant to stay. Relaxing isn't about becoming passive. It's about becoming truthful, and truth has a way of filtering your life so that what remains no longer requires you to fight yourself just to hold it. 7. Peace is not a reward, it sets a strategy. Most people treat peace like something they'll earn later. After the work is done, after the problem is solved, after life finally settles down. Until then, they tolerate constant tension and call it responsibility. But peace doesn't come after things work out. Things work out more often when peace is present. When you operate without peace, every situation feels heavier than it is. Small obstacles feel like threats. Minor setbacks trigger overreactions. You waste energy fighting imaginary futures instead of dealing with what's actually in front of you. That constant internal noise drains clarity. It makes you mistake urgency for importance and pressure for progress. Peace changes how you engage with difficulty. It doesn't remove challenges, but it removes panic from the equation. When panic is gone, you can think, you can listen, you can choose. You stop rushing into decisions just to relieve discomfort. You allow situations to unfold enough to understand them before acting. That alone prevents countless mistakes. Peace also makes you harder to manipulate. People who are calm cannot be easily rushed, guilted, or pressured into choices that don't serve them. They don't confuse loud voices with authority. They don't mistake chaos for opportunity. In a world that benefits from your anxiety, peace becomes a form of leverage. Many people believe that staying tense keeps them sharp. In reality, tension narrows perception. Peace expands it. When you're calm, you see more than one option. You recognize when to engage and when to step back. You notice patterns instead of reacting to isolated moments. That broader awareness leads to better timing and more sustainable outcomes. Peace also preserves energy. Anxiety leaks energy constantly. It keeps you mentally rehearsing, second-guessing, and worrying about things that haven't happened. Calm consolidates that energy. It allows you to direct effort where it actually matters. You stop burning yourself out on what you can't control and invest in what you can. This is why peace is not passive. It's deliberate. It requires restraint. It requires you to resist the urge to react to every trigger. It requires patience when others are rushing, and that restraint compounds over time. Calm people tend to make fewer catastrophic errors. Their progress may look slower on the surface, but it's more stable underneath. Peace also changes how life responds to you. When you're calm, you communicate clearly. You listen without defensiveness. You show up without desperation. That shifts the tone of interactions. Conflicts de-escalate. Opportunities feel cleaner. Outcomes arrive without the residue of chaos attached to them. Choosing peace doesn't mean you avoid effort or responsibility. It means you refuse to live in a constant state of internal war. You stop sacrificing your well-being for the illusion of control or speed. You understand that clarity, patience, and steadiness are not luxuries. They are tools. If you wait for everything to be perfect before allowing yourself peace, you'll never find it. Life will always present uncertainty. The question is whether you meet that uncertainty with panic or presence. Peace gives you the ability to stay grounded while life unfolds. And that grounding is what allows you to respond effectively rather than react destructively. In the end, peace is not something life gives you. It's something you choose so life can work with you. It's not a reward at the finish line. It's the strategy that gets you there without destroying you along the way. Take a moment and look honestly at how much of your life has been driven by tension, the rushing, the overthinking, the constant feeling that if you don't push harder, everything will fall apart. Ask yourself this: how much of that pressure actually helped, and how much of it just kept you tired, anxious, and disconnected from yourself? Relaxing is not giving up on your life. It's giving up the fight against it. It's recognizing that clarity doesn't come from force, and alignment doesn't come from panic. You still act, you still grow, you still show up, but you do it without fear gripping your decisions and distorting your vision. Everything you're chasing does not need your stress to arrive. It needs you steady enough to receive it. Many things miss people not because they weren't worthy, but because they were too tense to recognize the moment when it came quietly instead of dramatically. Life rarely announces itself. It slips in through ordinary days, calm decisions, and moments when you finally stop demanding certainty. When you relax, you stop blocking yourself, you stop sabotaging timing, you stop forcing outcomes that were never meant to be forced. You create space for what fits instead of clinging to what drains you. That space is where alignment lives. You don't need to rush to be ready. You don't need to panic to make progress. You don't need to exhaust yourself to deserve what's meant for you. Do your part with honesty. Stay present. Keep your values intact. Then loosen your grip. What's meant for you is already finding its way. Your only responsibility now is to be calm enough to let it arrive.